Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Carpe Datum Prescriptions for February 2013. Now, today's topic is about big data and big and business leaders. Now, what we found is in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion around big data, especially since the McKinsey article was produced in I guess the middle of 2011. The question which a lot of people are asking is, how have business leaders actually responded to the challenges of big data? Are they really using it? And to answer that question, we have with us here on the program Mr. Andre Bove, who has been a business leader for the last 25 years. Andre, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Suresh. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Andre, you've been in the industry for about 25 years now. You were the president and COO of SAS Institute and the VP of marketing for Oracle. And you've seen a lot of things over the last like 25 years or so. And you also had the distinction of having founded Pentaho. Um, what what can you say in terms of how this phenomenon is different than what you have seen in the last couple of decades so far?
Okay, well, let's kind of split up the experiences that I've had and maybe put it into those buckets. So I've had the distinct pleasure of working for companies like IBM and Oracle, where we really worried about the storage of the data, meaning the data warehousing aspect of it. I've had the pleasure of working for companies like Cognos Corporation, where we really worried about the reporting and analysis of the data. And then as the president and CEO of Sagent, I had the pleasure of working on the ETL side of it, extraction, transformation, data cleansing, and then loading the data warehouse. And then I had the pleasure of being the president and chief operating officer of SAS Institute, Inc., which is really on the predictive and advanced analytics side of it. So in other words, looking through the windshield as opposed to reporting about yesterday's news. And then I had the pleasure of redoing it all over again on the open source side of the equation by replicating all those functionality by co-founding Pentaho. So it's really been interesting, but that's basically going from a proprietary model to an open source model. That's just a business model change in the way you approach business. But really, there's a phenomenon now called big data, and rightly poised that is very different than what I'm used to dealing in the past, which is in the past we really dealt with structured data. So the changes is first is the type of data or the volume of data we're dealing with today. So volume, right? So
Yeah.
today and a lot of it, by the way, it's machine generated, right? Road sensors, intelligent RFID tags. I mean, there's so much that's being generated that's machine generated, and then obviously generated also by the sheer volume of people generating data today through things like social media. And so hey, let's make that change that the volume that we're dealing with today of information is exponentially higher than what I've had to deal with in my previous 35 years in this industry.
Okay.
That's the volume side.
Uh-huh.
Then there's the variety of the data. Okay, so we've gone from dealing strictly with structured data to today with unstructured data, and so that's very different, right? And so how do you handle that? So now again, so you're mixing complexity, which is increased volume and different types of data that you've got to handle. And then the third part is that these business leaders today are expected to make decisions based on this data in a much faster turnaround situations than in previous generations. And so it's velocity, it's the volume, and it's the variety of the data. And by the way, it's all exponentially different than the previous 35 years that I've been around. And so it's quite a challenge, and it's a challenge that companies are trying to grapple with and saying, how do I handle that? And as we go through, I'm sure I'll be able to provide you with real life examples as to the type of people that are grappling with their problem and how they're handling some of that.
Yeah, so we understand that it's very different now than it was before. Now, now a lot of our members are CEOs and business leaders of mainstream industry, not necessarily the IT industry, which seems to understand this really well. The question which I'm getting from CEOs is, if I'm a CEO of mainstream corporate America, what should be my takeaway on this? I mean, is big data really worth my time, or can I pass this on to by CIO or someone who handles IT?
Well, like clearly, like anybody else. I mean, as a CEO, as a business leader, you have to be you're the recipient of this data. You're trying to make business decisions based on this data. So you obviously have to be able to delegate it to the appropriate people in your organization to be able to build the plumbing and infrastructure to handle that. But it's not just at the executive level. So let's say you're a product manager for Procter and Gamble, and you're sitting there. And today, very different than in the past when we made a joint venture. When I was at Cognos, we made a joint venture with Procter and Gamble back in the late 80s, early 90s, where the product managers were trying to figure out, they wanted us to figure out what the available market space was for their product and the propensity to buy and all the initial. But it was all on data that we gathered and sliced and diced, put it in an OLAP cube and sliced it and diced it and analyzed it. And so again, it's rear view mirror observations, and then based on that, then you kind of make a predictive assumption as to where the future is going to lie. Today, they don't have that luxury. So today, if you're a product manager at Procter & Gamble, your CEO is asking you, why is your toothpaste, the product you're responsible for, and let's use an example, toothpaste, why is your market share shrinking? And to know that, you have to be aware of it immediately. In other words, you got to be able to mine all the social media networks. What is being said about your product, positive or negative? What's your competition tweeting about, is positive or negative? Or, and is there a change in habits? Is there a cultural, the different markets you're going into? It could be as simple as the name is culturally offensive, and so therefore it maybe not be the product, but maybe the name. Do you have the proper distributors? What's being said about those distributors in these countries? So there's so much information that has to be gathered, and I would say if not real time, it's close to real time. So let's call it near time, so that you, as a product manager, can assimilate all this information and make sense out of it. But what becomes very problematic, as we discussed earlier, here is the volume. So you've got this massive amount of data coming in. Some of it's structured, some of it's unstructured, and you got to be able to analyze it and correlate it and make sense of it. And maybe an analogy that would be useful here for the audience is I always compare it to the days I grew up with, so let's say like with Taft Institute Inc. Is we knew exactly where to go get the data. So look at it as basically gold mining, but underground. We knew exactly what the vein of gold was, what the propensity was, of the chances of us to be able to extract gold. And we could even forecast on how much gold you were going to get out of that vein per cubic yards of dirt removed. So when the mining company decided to go after that gold, they knew pretty much what their cost was going to be, how long it was going to take, and what the yield is going to be per cubic yards of raw materials that they had to remove and refine to get to that gold. In the world of big data, it's almost like strip mining, where you've got to sift through, and I mean just go and just basically unearth everything and sift through it at a very, very high speed, and then hone in and figure out where some of those gold nuggets are. And is it in that wheat field? Is it under that timber? Is it under those rocks? Is it under that mountain? We know there's gold in as they used to say, there's gold in them hills somewhere. But boy, it's very, very intensive. In other words, you've got to go through a lot of raw data,
right,
sift through it, and figure out where the gold is. So the tools are very different, right, than what we've had to use in the past.
I think the analogy which people often make, or the statement which people often make, is we don't know what we don't know about what we don't know. And so this searching for data, like strip mining as you call it, that makes it very uncertain on like what kind of results should we be expecting, how much it's going to cost, and what it's going to take to actually come out with meaningful results on that. Is that kind of what we're dealing with big data here?
It is, but again, if you go back to, that's maybe more of a commonality than in the past, because with what I have found with business intelligence is which is really a discovery tool, right? Because you're discovering intelligence in regards to your business, right? You're extracting some intelligence in your business that you didn't know, right? So every time I've ever seen an end user, and I'm a typical one as well, you run a report and you look at it and you say, oh, you know what? That makes me think. Well, what about if the temperature changed in the following geographies? Would there be a difference in demand and the type of products that my clients would want?
Right.
And then I don't know. Let's go back and run a report, right?
Okay.
And so let's go look at years where the temperature did change. So from that aspect, I don't think so, because the minute that you get a glimpse into your business, the next you come up with the next question, the next question, the next question, and it's very hard to anticipate what those questions are going to be until you get to the first step, right? Which is the first run, right? Then you get the first run, and then that generates another set of questions, another set of questions, another set of questions. But the difference again goes back to what I said earlier. It's the volume of data that you have to be able to sift through at a very, very high speed to be able to answer that question. The other part is the data points that you're correlating from. And they say in the past, you got reports, probably some financial reports, internally generated reports, and maybe some external data that you brought in. But today, there's all kinds of external data that's available, meaning much broader volume. Some of it's accurate, some's not. But I mean, I would say accurate data are things like machine-generated data, like from road sensors and RFID tags and so on. That's relatively accurate. But when in regards to understanding and trying to figure out what kind of sentiment is coming out from a social network, that's a little tougher, right? Because you're not dealing with structured data.
Right.
And in fact, not only are you not dealing with structured data, you're also dealing with different cultures,
right,
and geography. As you well know, depending on how old you are, the word bad means good.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you got to be able to figure out, okay, well, when does the word bad mean good?
And when does wicked mean good
and
too?
so what's it saying about my product?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so the challenges are there. Now, obviously, technology. There's a lot of technology available. The dollars per MIPS that are available today are much cheaper than when I first started in this industry. The amount of data that you can store per pennies is a lot less, and so on and so on. The communication speeds today is much higher than it was in the past. So obviously, there's some technological advantages today that weren't present back then. But from a software perspective, the software and the services haven't caught up, I believe, in my opinion anyway, to what the folks need to do today in big data to satisfy their demand. And so it's a booming industry. There's no doubt there's lots of room for innovation.
Yeah, and for those of you who are just joining the program, we are talking to Andre Boisvert, the former COO of the SAS Institute and the founder of Pentaho. And for anybody who has any questions, you can actually tweet them to #BigDataCEO, and we will be answering your tweets either on the show or after the show. But once again, getting back to Andre. Now, Andre, you mentioned that the gold rush and the analogy of the gold rush, and during the gold rush, if you remember right, some of the pioneers got killed, and they didn't make any money at all. In fact, they were it didn't work out so well for them. And going back to my sort of persona of the mainstream CEO, I find that a lot of my peers in the industry are aggressively moving towards big data. And what if I were to just prefer to let them be the pioneers and take all the risks, and when something's proven, I sort of get into big data myself after that? What's the downside in doing that?
Well, I think personally myself, I would recommend more of a balanced approach, because as much respect that I have for some of my ex-employers, and some of them have been acquired, but whether you're talking IBM Cognos, you're talking Oracle, if you look at those companies, none of them today have an end-to-end solution that addresses all facets of big data. So my advice to a CEO would be to go and get a trusted advisor in the industry. Typically, they're independent consultants that are not tied into a specific vendor's product, because my belief is that today a solution will have to be not cobbled together, but assembled together for the specific needs of a customer. And so that will require the technology from different corporations, vendors, to be put together for the specific needs of that customer. So nail down that trusted advisor firm, bring him in, let him assess the problem that you're trying to address, and then let them apply the technologies that they're familiar with in a fashion that addresses your problem. But I would not probably at the beginning give them a company-wide, high-visibility problem to be resolved. Even though they're a trusted advisor, you want to make sure that what they're proposing can work on a smaller scale. And then give you the comfort level that the scale of the problem, or the scale of the, meaning the volume of the data that needs to be handled, that the solution can handle it. And then you start scaling that way. So I don't think I would publicly go and announce some big program until I knew that it worked. But I don't think that the solution today can come from a single vendor. I think it's going to come more from a systems integrator or an independent consulting firm that will then decide per your requirement what vendors to bring to the table and how to put them together. And there's several boutique firms around the country that can do that.
Yeah, and a lot of them are probably more vested in the company's interest for a solution rather than promoting a single technology.
Correct. It's too early in my mind, and of course I've got my fingers in multiple aspects of big data. I mean, I'm chairman of a company that has a Cognitive database that is part of the equation. I'm co-founder of Pentaho, which has another piece of the equation. Mm-hmm. And I go through the slew of them. But none of them in themselves is the full solution, right? That's why they collaborate with each other, because none of them have a solution of their own. Right? It's a much broader problem,
right?
Than it can be tackled by one single vendor.
Now, if I were to get back to the original question, I mean, what would should I just wait for somebody else to do it and let this technology proven out before I even attempt it, or should I be one of the first to adapt? I mean, you said there should be a balanced approach.
Well, personally, if I was the CEO, no, I wouldn't, and that's why I said that I would go out and find a specific project that I think
right.
that tweaks my interest to be within the company to start. Because what you don't want is your board of directors and or your institutional investors to call you one day and say, well, we noticed that your competitor XYZ has been mining social media and big data, and as a result of got a market share increase, which clearly, in today's economy, any large market share increase means that it's coming out of somebody else's hide.
Right.
It's not because all boats not raising the same rate here. So I don't think I'd like to be the CEO that says, well, I was just waiting for all this technology to prove out before delving out there. I think I'd want to be in a position to say, we understand that, we've got a good grip on this, and we've already started a pilot project within the corporation to get a handle on, and an understanding of how we would tackle a bigger big data problem as we go down the stream, but we're tackling one today, right? And looking for real results out of it. And if it works well, then we'll replicate it. If it doesn't work well, then we find out where we got to change and tweak it. But you can't give up.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be like somebody saying, the early guys out there saying, you know what? Yeah, I know I did this business process reengineering study, and now I know how to be more efficient. But I'm going to continue to rely on my binders and flowcharts that came out of the BPR study, mm-hmm. instead of codifying it into the ERP system. I think that would be an idiotic decision. I think, yes, as you well know, there was early adopters of ERP systems, and some got burnt, but eventually they all made it through, every single one of them. And today, no one questions the wisdom of a company standardizing on an ERP system to run their business.
Right. In fact, what other historical context can you give to this phenomenon? I knew that. I mean, all of us know that we had a kind of a tulip run 15 years ago when the dot-com era in the late 90s, and some people didn't do so well on that. Some people did very well. Is there a historical context to or some parallel you can see on the adoption of something like big data or in any other emerging technology that you have seen in the last 20 years or so?
Okay, so I guess just so I understand your question a little more clear here, are you asking me is big data going to be a fad like the dot-com era, or just like the dot-com era, because there was so much money available, it basically spawned a whole bunch of companies that frankly shouldn't have even been around?
Well, yeah, I think that.
I guess what you.
The question is more of you've seen a lot of movies. Have you seen this one before? And how does it end?
No, I have. So I haven't seen the big data movie before. As
okay.
I stated earlier, this is Again, I haven't seen it before in three areas.
Mm-hmm.
The volume of data that we're talking about, the variety of the data that we're talking about, okay, and the velocity that the customer is being asked to sift through this data and make business decisions from. So no, that I have not seen.
That's very important. I mean, if this is unprecedented in that sense, that makes it a very, very important phenomenon.
Correct. And by the way, it's not going to go away. In fact, my prediction is it's going to get worse. Right.
Okay.
But I don't think it's going to get a lot worse before people start putting. I mean, as you know, human beings are quite resourceful, and you get enough bright people, they will solve the issue. And as I said, there's already pieces today to the problems that are being addressed by technology. But I can't point you to one single vendor that says, come to me and I've got an end-to-end solution for it. Okay, it's not coming from SAP, it's not coming from IBM, it's not coming from Oracle, it's not coming from anyone. Now they all have admirable pieces to it, and then there's obviously the small companies as well, where a lot of innovation is coming, and that's why again I keep pushing that. I think that based on the industry that I'd find myself in as a CEO, I think I would find my trusted advisor, which is usually an SI or an outside consulting firm, to come in, analyze what it is I'm trying to solve, or the first project I'm trying to solve, something that's not going to kill the company if I'm not successful at it on the first go out the door, and then cut my teeth on it, right? And then from there say, okay, what have I learned? And then you build a best practice, and then you go on to tackling the next problem within the company, okay, that's reliant on big data, okay? But I would say the earlier you start, the more experience you're going to have, the more confident you are going to be in tackling it, and this is not a fad. This isn't something that's going to go away here.
Yeah, so that sort of leads me into the next question. You talk about the earlier we start, the more prepared we may be. If I'm the CEO of a large corporation, what should I be asking my operating leaders and management team to be doing in terms of data? Should they be thinking differently about data, or should I replace them with people if they don't, replace them with someone else if they don't understand what big data means? How important is it going to be in defining the future leadership of major corporations?
Well, clearly, I think you need business leaders, right? Whether you call them general managers of divisions or product managers and so on, that need to know to understand the value that you can derive from big data. Again, using a simple analogy, but if I was sitting in Cincinnati and I was a product manager at Procter & Gamble, I would want to know almost on a daily basis what is being said about my specific product, and whether that's in the press, whether that's from bloggers, whether that's from social media. I'd like to know what is being said about my product,
Mm-hmm.
and then compare that with internally generated reports that tells me how am I doing geographically, where am I selling, where am I not selling, and then trying to figure out, okay, is that associated to having a bad brand in a country like Brazil because the name of my product may be offensive,
Mm-hmm.
not realizing that the name of my product is offensive? Is it that my competitor happens to have done a better job in Brazil, or is a toothpaste that's homegrown in Brazil, a homegrown product that's better than mine, or perceived to be better? These are the kinds of things I would want to know on a daily basis. So you just imagine the amount of data, right? And by the way, that's on the information side of it, of gathering, for lack of a better word, the sentiment about my product and how it's doing out there. Then there's the other side of the distribution side of it. Where is the product that I committed to my distributors? To an intelligent RFID tag, I should be able to know, which container is it on? Is it on the boat or on a train? How far is it from the home base, or is it going to a second tier distribution center and then going from there to eventually to the client site? I don't know. I need to know all that data.
Okay.
And so the amount of information is just, but again, you can't dilute someone with just a bunch of raw data,
Mm-hmm.
where they just think you need to be able to turn into actionable data, right,
Right.
or information. Transform data into actionable information, so that he or she, as a product manager, can make the right decisions and say, hey, here's what's going on with my product, and here's what I've got to do to rectify it or increase, to get this thing back on track, or to blow my numbers out of the water.
Great. Now, I think now, Andres, switching topics just a little bit here. You work with a lot of business leaders in the industry right now, and pretty much across the length and breadth of the country, in fact, globally as well. How prepared do you think business leaders are for big data in 2013? Have they spent enough time working through the issues and the possibilities and everything in the last few years? And are they really ready to take advantage of this from a practical point of view, or are they still struggling to get there?
Actually, it varies by industry more than geography.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so certain industries, like I would have to say, like the telecom industry, telecommunication industry, seems to be much more ahead in regards to understanding the data. So, understanding the type of customers they have, the type of revenue they derive per customer, what type of service, and therefore, obviously, figuring out from there what type of service should they hire. So you can imagine the vast amount of data that a telco is dealing with. Yes, it's very repeatable data, but it's mass volumes of data. And then trying to figure out from that data, what's the sentiment, right? Because the sentiment will kind of tell you, well, am I going to be facing a higher churn? As you know, in the telco industry, churn is not good. And so how do I keep that customer from jumping ship, right? Because it's recurring revenues you want. And then once you are able to keep the customer, what type of other services can you offer? So basically, believe it or not, I would say the telco industry is probably one of the industries that's probably the most advanced in tackling and handling big data. Unfortunately, one that's, I guess, closer to all of us as we age is, unfortunately, the healthcare industry has not been as good as it should be, in my mind, of being able to capitalize on big data. And I would probably rank them as probably one of the lowest.
Really?
Unfortunately.
So both have, they have a lot to gain by using analytics, don't they?
Well, one would think so, but until it comes to a point where they no longer can transfer their prices to the end user by just jacking up their insurance rate every year, and somebody says, that's it, you can't do that anymore, I think they're going to continue to just go the easy way. While the telcos, as you know, is very, very competitive. The margins are getting thinner.
Yes.
And the competition is there. So they know they have no choices, and they've done it. They've done a great job of harnessing big data. I don't think they're finished yet, but of all the industries, I probably would rank them as one of the highest in being able to tackle that. Retailers, depending again on retailers, also done, I think, a very, very good job. And they're not finished yet either. But I think that they're another industry that I think are leading in tackling big data.
Great. Now, if you were to give one piece of advice to people who have not actually jumped on board yet, or who are not taking enough, who have not taken this on right now, what would it be?
Well, so again, the advice I would give so if you're on the receiving end, again, if I was on the CEO side of the equation, again, I think it's at the risk of sounding repetitive here. Again, find a firm that you trust. It could be a firm that you're already existing, your trusted advisor. Look and see whether or not they have the specialty that makes you comfortable.
Yeah.
But no different than if you go back many, many years ago. What customers did is they brought in a trusted consulting firm, typically one of the big fives at the time, to do a business process reengineering study. And at the end of it, they would come out with nice flow charts and a set of binders and say, here's how you change your processes to be able to be more profitable and keep less on inventory and all the usual stuff, right?
Yep.
So that you're a more profitable firm. And then came along and said, well, geez, why don't we take that and codify it into what is known today as an ERP system?
Right.
Well, I think the same thing would evolve. I think that what you need to do here is to bring in somebody today that comes in and be a trusted advisor and say, okay, here's the way that we typically handle data discovery. Here's the way that we get data. Here's the way we do data discovery. And I guarantee you, 90%, 95% of it will be built around structured data because that's what they've been dealing with for years, right?
Right. Right.
You do an extract, you do an extract, a transform, data cleanse, you load it into the data warehouse, and you extract it again, and then you use a Cognos Business Objects Hyperion, doesn't really matter, or Pentaho, and you do some reporting, and then if you want to do some additional analysis, you throw it into an OLAP cube, and you slice it and dice it for further analysis. And then if you really want to go further ahead, then you start doing predictive and advanced analytics, and you build a model, and you start comparing your model versus actual, right?
Yep.
And then therefore you build a capacity or a capability to kind of predict accurately what's coming down the road. We've done that now, right? And that's proven, and it works, right? But now it's the other side of the equation on big data. You can't point to a single vendor that has done it from end to end, and so you really do need a trusted advisor that can come in and pick the specific pieces that they need, whether the piece comes from Oracle, another piece from IBM, another piece from Pentaho, whatever. And then you put the pieces together based on your specific requirements, say based on what it is that you're trying to tackle and what it looks like you're going to be tackling in the future. Here are the pieces that I think we should glue together and use that as your basis for your big data. And then prove it on some project that's not going to kill you, that's meaningful to the company, but it's not going to kill you. It's not going to bring the company down if it's not successful. And then learn from that, and then start building the expertise. But start building it at some point. I would also recommend you've got to start building the expertise in-house, or otherwise, you're basically advocating running your business, an important part of your business, to a bunch of consultants.
Right. Now, Andre, I think we are almost out of time right now. Just in closing, if we were to have this conversation, let's say 3 years from now, what do you think would have happened in the 3 years between now and, let's say, February 2016?
Well, I think what you're going to see is, my prediction is, you're going to see some consolidation in the industry.
Yeah.
Because as you well know, very large enterprise customers tend to want to deal with just a certain set. They don't want to deal with 1,000 small companies or thousands of small companies.
Right.
They tend to want to deal with a handful of very large vendors, whether they be an SAP, an Oracle, or a mixture of IBM and so on, HP and so on. So they typically want to, they've been on this kick now for quite a few years now. You don't think I can blame them, as they want to reduce the amount of vendors they deal with, especially on the maturing technology side, while accepting that on the advanced technologies that they need to deal with, that the innovation clearly comes mainly from small companies. So they're always dealing with small companies and hinting to the bigger guys at some point that they should be acquiring the smaller company for security reasons, right, and ease to deal with, and so on and so on. So it all gets back to, I think, that what's going to happen is, as the technology starts being a little more mature, more developed, the winners start pulling away from the marginal guys. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to see the big guys acquiring the more successful smaller sized companies that are proven to have an impact in the marketplace and big data, and being able then in turn turn those into enterprise type licenses to their customers, and given the security that these large enterprise customers tend to want. I think that's what you're going to see, in my opinion. But whether that's 3 years from now or 5 years from now, I'm not sure, but it's probably somewhere in that range.
Yeah, so we'll probably call you back in 3 years and see how much of that actually pans out, and how much of it is.
Okay, well, okay. That'll be interesting. I still intend to be in this business, so I'm going to be around.
Right. So again, Andre, thank you very much for your time, and for those of us who are listening, we were talking to Andre Boisvert, the former president of SAS Institute and the founder of Pentaho. Thank you all for attending. An archived recording of this program would be available at Carpe Datum RX /events, and you can get it there anytime starting tomorrow. Thank you all for attending. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andre.